I still remember the day I first realized that my life had become woven into a tapestry of contradictions, a seamless blend of love and betrayal, hope and despair, revealing the delicate fragility of human connections. My marriage, once a sanctuary of stability and shared dreams, had slowly decayed into a battleground of secrets and simmering resentments. In the quiet hours of dusk, when the world seemed to hold its breath, I began to deeply question every decision I had ever made, wondering how I had allowed things to deteriorate so drastically. It was in those moments of solitude, with only the faint chirping of crickets to accompany my turbulent thoughts, that I began to dissect the fragments of my reality. I could still taste the sweetness of our early years, the laughter that echoed in our small kitchen, where we would dance barefoot, embraced by the tantalizing aroma of cinnamon and coffee. But somewhere along the way, the sweet notes had turned bitter, leaving a residue of misunderstandings and long-forgotten promises. As I stared out at the fading light, a pang of longing for the connection we had lost filled my chest. I remembered the day we shared our dreams, our aspirations seemingly etched into the air, and how they felt so tangible, so close within our reach. Yet one by one, those dreams withered, replaced by unspoken grievances and heavy what-ifs that hung like dark clouds over our lives, tarnishing the once bright sky of our future. I began to search for a way out of this labyrinth of confusion. Therapy emerged as a potential path for healing, a lifeline thrown in desperate times. The idea both frightened and intrigued me. Would peeling back the layers of our marriage finally reveal the core of our deep-seated discontent, or merely expose more wounds? As I wrestled with these thoughts, I gradually understood that the questions I posed could lead me deeper into my psyche, unveiling the raw truths I had buried for far too long. The next morning, I decided to make an appointment. If nothing else, I needed clarity, an understanding of my own heart and the emotions that had become such a tangled web. With each passing day, the urgency to confront the truth grew stronger, pushing me to assemble the courage I had thought I had lost. And as I walked through the doors of the therapist's office, I felt the onset of a tentative hope, a whisper that perhaps rebuilding was possible, even amidst the ruins of our love. Yet with the recognition of hope came the stark reality of the complexity I would face. Would my husband be willing to embark on this journey with me? Or would it be yet another solitary road I would have to navigate alone? Each thought sent me spiraling into a whirlwind of uncertainty, yet it also ignited a fierce spark of resolution within me. I knew that change required courage, and the only way through this journey would be to face my fears head-on, confronting the very contradictions that had come to define my existence. As I sat in that chair, the therapist's warm, encouraging smile greeted me. Perhaps this was the beginning of untangling the narrative I had woven, a chance to stitch together the disparate threads of my life into something coherent again. The hope of rediscovering love in its purest form was daunting, but I was ready to untangle the complexities and redefine the story I had been living. With each session, I would peel back the layers, uncovering the hidden truths that had shaped my journey thus far, and for the first time, perhaps I could write a new chapter. My name is Daniel, and this is the story of how I became both the architect and the victim of a scandal that would forever alter the course of my existence. I tell this tale in the first person, not out of pride, but in the bitter recognition of my own frailties, a confession meant for any married soul between 30 and 45 who has ever felt the sting of betrayal, even as they struggle with their own inner demons. I was raised believing that love was a constant, much like the steady beat of a heart. My wife Veronica embodied that promise. We married young, dreaming of growing old together and building a life that was secure and beautiful. Yet as the years passed, the mundane routine of everyday life began to seep through our union's cracks, leaving me feeling confined, as if the walls of our carefully arranged life were closing in on me, stifling both my spirit and ambition. Those small moments of joy that once felt infinite dwindled like a fading sunset, casting shadows over our shared happiness. I would find myself daydreaming about a life that felt more vibrant, more alive. The spark we once shared, the eruptive laughter that filled our home, had been replaced by a comfortable silence that often bordered on suffocating. Even our conversations devolved into mere exchanges about schedules and responsibilities, glossing over the deeper emotions that had once united us in love. Veronica, too, seemed to feel the shift, though she masked it beneath layers of tedium. Our routines, once our shared rhythm, became a haunting echo of disconnection. I could see the glimmer of disappointment in her eyes when I would occasionally retreat into the sanctuary of my thoughts, a world where passion and adventure thrived. My heart ached at the thought that I might be letting her down, yet I struggled to conjure the energy to rebuild what had been lost. One crisp autumn afternoon, an idea struck me. What if I planned a surprise getaway, a trip that could whisk us from our routine into the unfamiliar arms of adventure? As I outlined our escape, a sense of hope blossomed within me. I could almost hear the echoes of our laughter, feel the warmth of her hand in mine as we explored a new city, savored new flavors, and breathed in different air. One crisp autumn afternoon, an idea struck me. What if I planned a surprise getaway, a trip that could whisk us away from our routine into the unfamiliar arms of adventure? As I began to outline our escape, a sense of hope began to blossom within me. I could almost hear the echoes of our laughter, feel the warmth of her hand in mine as we explored a new city, tasted new flavors, and breathed in different air. This thought fueled my determination. I started to map out every detail: quaint bed and breakfasts, scenic hikes, and cozy cafes. When the day finally arrived, I couldn't contain my excitement. I revealed the plan to Veronica with a sense of nervous eagerness. Her eyes, once clouded with routine, sparked anew with curiosity. Together, we packed our bags, leaving behind the weight of everyday life for the promise of joy that lay ahead. The adventure unfolded like a long dormant flower blooming in the springtime. We walked through streets drenched in golden leaves and past ivy-covered buildings that whispered stories of love and time. We made silly bets on which cafe would have the best pastries and engaged in playful banter that rekindled the flame of our companionship. I watched in awe as Veronica's laughter filled the air, as vibrant and beautiful as the setting sun, reminding me of the girl I had fallen in love with so many years ago, the laughter that once permeated our shared home. Through those shared moments, I began to understand that love was not a static entity, but a living, breathing force that required continuous nurturing and creativity. Just as a garden flourishes under the right care, so too could our relationship thrive if we were willing to tend to it with intention and patience. We returned home, refreshed and intertwined, with a renewed understanding of what it meant to be partners in love, ready to face whatever challenges life would throw our way together. With every challenge we faced, regardless of its magnitude, we began to view them not as dividing walls, but as stepping stones leading us to greater teamwork and intimacy. Late-night discussions transformed from mere exchanges of opinions into profound dialogues revealing our vulnerabilities, fears, and aspirations. In those vulnerable moments, we recognized the immense importance of vulnerability. It was the very soil from which our love could thrive and blossom into something even more beautiful. With every challenge we faced, whether small or monumental, we began to see them not as dividing walls, but as stepping stones leading us toward greater teamwork and intimacy. Late-night discussions transformed from superficial exchanges of opinions into deep-dive dialogues that unveiled our vulnerabilities, fears, and aspirations. In those moments, we recognized the true importance of vulnerability. It was the very soil from which our love could grow and flourish. Seasons changed, and with them came the ebb and flow of life circumstances, job changes, family responsibilities, and personal growth. But instead of viewing these as hurdles, we embraced them as opportunities. We became each other's cheerleaders, celebrating successes and offering support during setbacks, always reminding each other that we were in this together, come what may. Even in silence, our connection deepened. We found comfort in the simple act of sitting side by side, each engrossed in our own activities, yet somehow still intertwined, sharing a space filled with warmth and understanding. I discovered joy in the quiet moments. The comfort of just being present with one another became a cornerstone of our relationship. It was in those serene interludes that I fully grasped the beauty of companionship, knowing that no matter the chaos outside our door, within our shared home was a sanctuary built on respect and affection. As we approached our anniversary, we decided to revisit the place where our understanding of love first bloomed. With each step through familiar paths, memories flooded back, each corner enriched with laughter and insight, revealing how far we had come while acknowledging the trials that had tested us and the triumphs that had uplifted us. In that moment of reflection, we made a pact not just to survive whatever awaited us, but to thrive as partners. We promised to keep nurturing our love, to keep creating, and to continue exploring the depths of our bond. For love was not just an end goal, but a lifelong adventure, one that we intended to experience side by side, hand in hand, heart to heart. I can still recall the first time I met Elise. It was a chance encounter at an art exhibition, a moment fleeting yet charged with an energy that I had long forsaken. She was vibrant and unpredictable, an erotic force that urged me to embrace every hidden desire. Our conversation flowed in a way that made my heart race and my mind question everything I knew about fidelity. The attraction was instant and intoxicating. I remember thinking, could this be freedom? Could the thrill of the forbidden be the antidote to the life I had grown to resent? Every stolen glance, every whispered confession in the dark hours of the night felt like a rebellion against an existence I no longer embraced, a chance to escape the emotional confines that had begun to suffocate me. As I plunged deeper into this clandestine romance, I can't help but recall the many moments from my past that set the stage for my transgression. I remember childhood summers spent running freely in open fields, feeling the rush of wind and the promise of a limitless future. Life had seemed so simple then, so full of unbridled possibility. But as time went on and reality set in, I found myself content with convention, until the encounter with Elise shattered that complacency. Her laughter like music echoed in my mind long after we parted, igniting a flame I thought long extinguished. Each stolen glance felt like a secret pact, a promise to step outside the lines drawn by society. I found solace in the thrill of our late-night conversations, each one revealing intricate designs of her spirit and an enchanting way of seeing the world that made the mundane seem extraordinary, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. As summer waned and autumn's crispness crept in, I felt a tug of war within, a battle between the safety of my predictable life and the intoxicating allure of the unknown that Elise represented. Would I sacrifice my carefully curated existence for the chance at something beautiful and risky? I began questioning the very foundations of my routine, the suffocating predictability of my job, my relationships, and the future I had meticulously mapped out. Was it truly what I desired? Every rendezvous with Elise was steeped in a sense of urgency, as if we were living on borrowed time. Our meetings were like sand slipping through an hourglass, and I longed to preserve every laugh, every touch, every whispered secret shared under a canopy of stars. The thrill we found in each other's presence was a balm for my restless spirit. With her, I explored places in my heart that had long laid dormant, unearthing desires I had either suppressed or forgotten altogether. Yet with every stolen moment, a shadow of guilt loomed larger. I knew that my actions could unravel the very fabric of my life. But oh, how liberating it felt to defy expectations. Sometimes I would catch myself smiling like a fool, replaying the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her dreams. I wanted to chase those dreams with her, leave the constraints of my past behind, and leap into this uncharted territory together. But was I strong enough to commit to this new path? As the leaves changed colors and we approached the season of endings and new beginnings, I realized that the sweetest adventures are often laced with pain and sacrifice. The thrill of loving Elise was intertwined with the heavy weight of consequence. In the quiet moments when we were wrapped in each other's arms, I pondered at what cost such love would come. Would it be worth it, I wondered? As I gazed into her eyes filled with spark and mystery, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps the greatest journeys are the ones that scare us the most. And so, as I took a leap of faith into this new chapter, I understood that the only way forward was to embrace both the beauty and the uncertainty of our imperfect love, daring to redefine who I was in the process. Veronica, too, had once been full of life. In my earliest recollections of our courtship, her eyes shone with dreams of adventure and passion. We were at that time equals in hope, two souls intertwined, promising each other the world. Yet with every passing year, the vibrancy dimmed ever so slightly, replaced by the comforting dullness of routine. My internal battle had begun long before Elise ever entered the picture. It was a struggle between the safety of the familiar and the allure of the forbidden. It was on a rainy Thursday when I first met Elise in a more intimate setting. This happened during a small gathering of friends, a seemingly mundane event where life's trivialities were discussed over glasses of wine. Elise's presence was magnetic, and even amidst the crowd, I could sense her uniqueness, radiating charm. When our eyes met, I felt a jolt of electricity coursing through me. convincing me to break the dam of my repressed desires and explore the possibilities of a life untethered. I remember stepping outside into the cool drizzle with her. In that moment, the sound of raindrops was our only witness as we exchanged the first tentative words that would soon spiral into a torrential affair. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice both teasing and sincere, "do you ever feel like you're sleeping through your own life?" And in that question, a key turned in my heart, a question that forced me to confront the truth about my lost self. That night, every suppressed emotion and unexpressed yearning found an outlet in the passion I shared with Elise. It was intoxicating, a mix of lust and liberation, making me feel more alive than I had in years. Yet even amid the fervor, I battled an internal conflict, an overwhelming sense of betrayal, not just toward Veronica, but toward the man I once aspired to be. As I lay there, the weight of my choices pressed down like an anchor. The moonlight filtered through the half-drawn curtains, casting shadows that danced across the room, mirroring the turmoil within me. I turned to Elise, her features soft and serene in sleep, utterly unaware of the storm brewing inside me. She represented everything I craved in that moment: freedom, adventure, a chance to break away from the confines of my life. Yet every heartbeat reminded me of the commitments I had made to Veronica, the promises etched in our lives, the vows that had once meant everything to me. In the quiet of the night, I felt the memories of Veronica's laughter intertwine with the whisper of Elise's breath. Those times we shared, the laughter that echoed in our home, the dreams of the future we had painted together, all came rushing back. It was impossible to ignore the stark contrast between what I had built and the fleeting thrill that marked my current affair. Was I merely seeking solace in Elise's arms, or was I truly falling in love with her? This question haunted me, taunting me with visions of a fractured heart. As dawn approached, the first light of day cast a new perspective on my situation. I needed clarity, a plan to confront the emotional mess I had woven myself into. Sitting up, I considered my choices. Would I continue down this path of reckless abandon, or would I muster the courage to face the consequences of my actions? Each option beckoned with its own siren call, yet I couldn't shake the nagging sense that whatever I chose would resonate far beyond just my own heart. A decision loomed on the horizon, and I knew it would take more than desire to resolve the tangled web of feelings. It was time to confront my desires, to understand what they truly meant, whether they reflected my genuine self or were merely reactions to long-brewing dissatisfaction. The weight of my decisions felt immense, but for the first time, a flicker of hope emerged. Through honesty and vulnerability, I could reconcile the man I was with, the man I yearned to become. As the sun rose, illuminating the room in warm hues, I resolved to face the truth, not just for myself, but for Veronica, for Elise, and ultimately for the life I truly wanted to lead. I knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey towards honest redemption, and while the path seemed daunting, it felt like the first step towards true liberation. Time, I have come to realize, is not linear, but rather a collection of overlapping memories and present regrets. On many sleepless nights, I would find myself drifting between the tangible reality of my present and the bittersweet echoes of my past. I recall one evening, months into the affair, when I sat on our old creaking porch, gazing at the stars as if they held the secrets of my soul. A sudden knock at the door jolted me from my reverie. It was Veronica, her eyes glistening with tears that spoke of years of unspoken pain. "Daniel, I need to talk," she said softly. But in that moment, who was I? The man shackled by guilt, or the one drowning in desire? I could not answer her, for inside I was already a fractured man, living two lives at once. Interlaced with these present memories, there were moments I recalled from long ago. The time when Veronica and I used to dance in the kitchen as a married couple, laughing as if nothing could ever go wrong. And yet, as the flashbacks cascaded through my mind, they served only to accentuate the stark contrast between what once was and what has now become. Days passed in quiet reflection, each one heavier than the last. It was during these moments that I found myself rummaging through old boxes tucked away in the attic, searching for pieces of our past. I stumbled upon a collection of photographs, their colors faded but filled with the laughter and love we had shared. Each snapshot told a story: a picnic at the lake where we first declared our dreams, a spontaneous road trip that found us lost but happy, and moments of simple joy that seemed insignificant at the time, yet now felt monumental. In these echoes of laughter, I sensed a poignant truth. How easily we took for granted the comfort of companionship and the warmth of shared adventures. The shifting seasons of life had brought us here, to a place where silence stretched between us like an unbridgeable chasm. I could almost hear Veronica's laughter in my mind, a soft melody that seemed to invite me to remember the woman who stood beside me, the one who was my partner in every adventure. On a particularly nostalgic evening, I prepared one of our favorite dishes, a recipe passed down through generations. The aroma filled the house, and for a brief moment, it felt like she was there, twirling around in the kitchen with me, her hair catching the light like a halo. I set the table for two, a habit I couldn't yet shake, hoping that each time I did, it would somehow draw her back into the room like a lingering fragrance. It was futile, I knew. The void left in her absence was undeniable, yet I craved that semblance of connection. As the days turned into weeks in that investigation into healing and understanding, I began to explore the possibility of mending the rifts in my heart. I reached out to friends who had known us both, sharing stories and laughter that sparked flickers of warmth amidst the chill of solitude. Each conversation was a thread knitting together the fabric of our shared lives, showcasing the sense of closure while simultaneously reopening wounds I thought I had tucked away. Slowly, I realized that honoring Veronica's memory required me to embrace both the joy and the sorrow, a realization that was as liberating as it was painful, marking a crucial step on my journey of healing. With each passing day, I found myself dancing again, though it was not quite the same without her. I would sway gently to the music that had once filled our home, allowing the rhythm to carry me back to the days of old. In those moments, I could almost envision her beside me, her smile as bright as the sun. I danced not only out of memory, but for the promise of a future that, while altered, held the potential for new beginnings. And so, I continued to step forward into a reality reshaped by love, loss, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Just as I began to believe that my double life was sustainable, reality delivered a cruel twist that shattered the illusion I had so carefully crafted. It was at a charity gala, held under the opulent chandeliers of the Grand Hall, where laughter and clinking glasses masked the undercurrents of deceit swirling around us. In a moment of serendipity, I overheard a conversation that would unravel the very threads of my existence. Elise, the woman who had ignited a fire within me, was not the solitary renegade I had imagined her to be. No, it turned out she was ensnared in a marriage of her own, a clandestine life woven with lies that she had kept hidden from even her closest friends. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning piercing the calm night sky, illuminating the dark corners of my heart. I had always prided myself on possessing the moral compass to recognize the dangerous consequences of our choices. However, my clarity had been dulled by the intoxicating glow of passion that enveloped me. I found myself swept away in a whirlwind of emotions, fury, confusion, and overwhelming remorse. Days turned into endless sleepless nights as I wrestled with the disquieting thought that perhaps I had fallen for nothing more than a beautifully crafted fantasy, a mirage that obscured the complex and flawed human being standing before me. My heart began to fracture under the considerable weight of betrayal, questioning how often we allow desire to blind us to the truth of those we hold dear, revealing the emotional turmoil that lay just beneath the surface. As I gazed out of the window, the world outside appeared vivid and vibrant, a stark contrast to the monochrome haze in my mind. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their rustling leaves whispering secrets of clarity and hope. Yet even the beauty of nature felt tainted by my internal struggle. The laughter of children playing in the park nearby echoed mockingly, reminding me of a joy that seemed forever out of reach. Was this what love had become? A battleground of emotions? A relentless cycle of joy intertwined with pain? Perhaps the real illusion had been my insistence on viewing him through rose-colored glasses, blinded by infatuation, rather than rooted in reality. I recalled my friends' warnings, their furrowed brows and hesitant whispers filled with concern as they watched me spiral deeper into a labyrinth of unreciprocated affection. Don't lose yourself, they had urged. But how could one untangle their heart from what seemed alive? Perhaps the real illusion had been my insistence on seeing him through rose-colored glasses, blinded by infatuation rather than grounded in reality. I recalled my friends' warnings, the furrowed brows and hesitant whispers, each filled with concern as they watched me spiral deeper into a labyrinth of unreciprocated affection. Don't lose yourself, they had urged, but how could one untangle their heart from the very essence of what felt alive within? It was a conflict that clawed at the back of my mind, echoing like a haunting melody. In that moment, I realized I had a choice. I could either continue to be swept away by the fantasy or muster the strength to confront the truth. A truth that would be uncomfortable, perhaps even soul-crushing, but necessary for my own healing. I envisioned a future where my heart would mend, where I would reclaim my identity, not as someone defined by another, but as an individual capable of forging her own path, with clarity as my guiding star. With renewed resolve, I decided it was time to break free, to confront him not with accusations, but with a calm certainty that came from understanding my own worth. As I prepared for what lay ahead, a flicker of hope ignited within me. I envisioned a life where I could rediscover the beauty of authenticity, where love would not be entangled with toxic threads, but woven with respect and mutual understanding. No longer would I allow the shadows of doubt to dictate my actions. Instead, I would step into the light of self-awareness, ready to embrace the journey that awaited me. As dawn broke on the day of my revelation, clarity enveloped me like the first rays of sunlight piercing through a heavy fog. I chose my outfit deliberately, each piece or a night reflecting the vibrant and confident or a person I had already must become. The mirror showed not just my appearance, but an inner strength I had long forgotten. Today I would reclaim the narrative of my life, a weird story mine to tell, free from influences that had sought to diminish my voice. Termination, which were worn, sir. As I grappled with this betrayal, the fabric of my life began to fray further with yet another layer of complexity. Veronica, whose silent suffering I had mistakenly interpreted as a resignation to our drifting marriage, revealed that she too had secrets tucked away, like shadows lurking in the corners of our home. Little things began to catch my attention. A furtive glance at her phone, a sudden hush in her conversations whenever I entered the room. It dawned on me, slowly and painfully, that the wounds in our marriage ran much deeper than simple neglect or miscommunication. The very foundation of our life together was crumbling under the weight of unspoken truths, and in this tangled web of deception, I couldn't escape the gnawing fear that there was much more to discover, a darker narrative playing out beneath our seemingly normal lives. In the midst of my internal turmoil, a third perspective began to surface, one that transcended my immediate selfish ambitions. From an external vantage point, a silent observer meticulously chronicled the events unfolding in our seemingly ordinary lives. This third-person perspective, as if narrated by fate itself, illuminated the interconnectedness of our decisions and the ramifications of our actions on each other's lives. I discovered almost too late that the bitterness of our betrayals was not exclusive to me. The lives entangled in this drama were all victims of their choices, and every deceit had carved a scar into the delicate fabric of modern relationships. Even as I justified my actions in twisted moments of self-pity and longing, I began to understand that the true catastrophe was not in the act of betrayal itself, but in the unraveling of trust that once bound us together. In the quiet aftermath of our unraveling, I found myself wandering through memories like fragments of a shattered mirror, each piece reflecting a different version of what we once were. Friends had become strangers, lovers transformed into bitter reminders of lost intimacy, and the laughter we shared now echoed with a haunting sorrow. I began to question the very foundation of every bond I had nurtured. Was loyalty merely an illusion we constructed to avoid facing our own inadequacies? Or was it a fragile promise we made to each other, one we carelessly let slip through our fingers in moments of weakness? As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the weight of guilt settled heavily on my chest, a constant reminder of the lives I had affected. I sought refuge in solitude, diving deep into the recesses of my mind, trying to decipher the lessons hidden in the chaos. Each night, visions of laughter mingled with visions of tears, a tragic symphony that replayed in my thoughts. Attempts to reconnect often fell flat, as if the universe itself conspired to highlight the chasm that had formed between us. But then one chilly evening, while sifting through old photographs, I stumbled upon a picture from brighter days, an image so vivid that it pulled at the threads of nostalgia woven through my heart. We were all smiling, carefree in a moment, untainted by the shadows that would soon engulf us. It was a pivotal reminder that we had shared so much more than just pain. We had basked in the warmth of joy, and in that moment, the spark of reconnection ignited within me. Days passed in agonizing silence, punctuated only by fleeting moments of courage when I would replay our memories, dissecting every nuance of my failures. Then as light began to filter through the veil of my self-imposed exile, responses trickled in. One by one, I received messages echoing the same sentiment, a mixture of longing and trepidation, each person reflecting the very struggles that had driven us apart. Days passed in agonizing silence, punctuated only by fleeting moments of courage when I would replay our memories, dissecting every nuance of my failures. Then as light began to filter through the veil of my self-imposed exile, responses trickled in. One by one, I received messages echoing the same sentiment, a mixture of longing and trepidation, each person reflecting the very struggles that had driven us apart. We agreed to meet, and on that fateful day, the air buzzed with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. As I arrived at our usual haunt, a cozy cafe filled with the smell of freshly brewed coffee, I spotted familiar faces, each wearing expressions that mirrored my own, a cocktail of hope intertwined with fear. The moment we began to speak, it became clear that the scars of our betrayals were not as deep as the bonds we could still cultivate. With each shared story, the pieces of our fractured relationships began to fit together, slowly stitching the fabric of trust that had once been torn asunder. Gradually, the agenda of our meeting transformed from confessions to understanding. Lines were drawn, boundaries established, and accountability embraced. It became evident that healing was not just an individual journey, it was a collective effort, one built on vulnerability and the bravery to confront our past. We poured out our hearts, acknowledging our failings while also celebrating the strength required to face them. In those exchanges, we uncovered a valuable truth. The scars each of us bore were not marks of division, but rather symbols of survival. As laughter filled the air and tears intermingled, a sense of reconnection enveloped us like a warm blanket on a cold winter night. The bitterness that once clouded our past began to dissolve, and in its place emerged the sweet scent of forgiveness, as fragile yet potent as spring blossoms pushing through the remnants of winter. We knew there would still be hurdles ahead, but the first step had been taken, and with it, a glimmer of hope flickered anew in the fabric of our intertwined lives. I recall a moment of piercing clarity one autumn afternoon when I found myself at a crossroads, memories of past promises colliding with the present reality of my fractured heart. I was pushed to confront not just the external consequences of my actions, but also the internal war waging between my yearning for liberation and the crushing guilt that threatened to consume me. In the midst of this chaos, a fateful encounter with Elise catalyzed the first of three major twists that would forever alter our destinies. One evening, as we met in a secluded corner of a dimly lit restaurant, Elise's eyes shimmered with an intensity that belied her usual guarded demeanor. "Daniel," she said in a trembling tone, "there's something you must know about me." I leaned forward, my heart pounding in anticipation and dread. She confessed that her marriage was not just a facade, but a prison meticulously constructed by her manipulative husband, a man who had long since abandoned any semblance of genuine affection. Elise's tale resonated with me deeply, evoking my own suppressed fears of entrapment and regret. In that moment, I felt a surge of empathy for her plight, even as my own internal conflicts screamed in protest. As she recounted the early days of their relationship, I could see the glimmer in her eyes, the naive hope that had initially drawn her to him. "He was charming, you know," she continued, her voice tinged with both nostalgia and pain. Every compliment felt like a gift, every promise like a vow wrapped in a velvet ribbon. I nodded, my heart aching for the dream she once held close, now shattered under the weight of betrayal. Elise paused, taking a deep breath, as if summoning enough strength to face the truth. "But charm can be a mask, hiding something far darker," she added, her gaze drifting to the window where the fading light punctuated the growing shadows of night. "It's easy to overlook the warning signs when love blinds you." I leaned closer, feeling an urge to reach out, to offer her a thread of comfort in her turmoil. She spoke of the years that slipped by like grains of sand through her fingers, moments stolen by his selfishness, joy eclipsed by his burgeoning demands. "I realized too late that I was not his partner, but his possession," she sighed, her voice cracking. "My identity, my aspirations, They were crushed under his ambition. I became a caretaker of his dreams while my own withered in silence. The revelation struck me hard, reflecting my own fears about losing my identity in the faces of our societal expectations. Just as I was about to formulate a question, she looked at me with a fierce determination. But I refused to be a victim any longer. I am reclaiming my life, Elise declared, her eyes igniting with a newfound fire. And if that means walking away from everything I thought I knew, so be it. Her strength was palpable, inspiring a flicker of courage within me. As the weight of her revelation settled between us, I understood that this was more than just her story. It was a testament to resilience, a call to all who felt trapped in their lives. Perhaps we are more than the roles assigned to us, I mused, contemplating the broader implications of her journey. Maybe there is freedom in breaking free, in rewriting our narratives. Elise smiled softly, an acknowledgement of a shared understanding blooming in the air. The conversation shifted from despair to hope, from entrapment to the boundless possibilities that lie in self-discovery. Together, we began to fashion a vision for what our lives could become, empowered by the truth that neither of us ever had to live in solitude or silence. This confession threw my world into further disarray. I began to see her not as the unbridled temptress, but as a tortured soul, desperate for liberation. Yet as I tried to reconcile her vulnerabilities with my own guilt, I could not escape the reality that we were merely reflections of each other's broken dreams, a fact that would soon give rise to even greater revelations. Just as I started to navigate the labyrinth of my conflicted emotions, fate delivered another blow. Veronica, whose silence had always seemed a quiet acceptance of life's burdens, began to unveil a side of her I had never anticipated. One chilly winter morning, I stumbled upon letters hidden in a forgotten drawer. Letters that revealed Veronica had been engaging in her own clandestine correspondence with a confidant whose identity I initially couldn't fathom. The discovery forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth. Veronica had been planning her own escape, a deliberate dismantling of the life we had so painstakingly built. As I pored over each word, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Anger, betrayal, and a strange sense of vindication mingled in my mind. Veronica's actions, though morally ambiguous, seemed to me a long overdue act of retribution against the longevity of our mutual neglect. It was as if I could hear her voice echoing in my mind, explaining her rationale. The nights spent alone while I buried myself in work, the weekends she sacrificed for my ambition, the dreams she shelved while I chased success like a moth to a flame. Each memory surged forth, and I began to question how I could have been so blind to her needs. My focus had been so singular that I had failed to notice the growing distance between us. What had once felt like a partnership now seemed like a prison, each of us encaged in our own expectations. With each line of her note, I unearthed not just her intentions, but a mosaic of the fractured moments that ultimately led us here. Veronica had crafted a blueprint for her freedom, a detailed map that illustrated her desire to carve out a life unfettered by the demands of my ambitions. Yet I found myself at a one critical crossroad, torn between the pangs of loss for the future we would never share and a burgeoning respect for her strength and quinquennial resolve, a paradox that left my heart in tumult. This newfound perspective began to shift something within me. I wondered if, in her quest for freedom, I might also discover my own. Could I still salvage what was left of our relationship, or was I merely holding on to an illusion of a life we had once envisioned together? The hours slipped by as I replayed the arguments and the silence that had become all too common between us. I realized that perhaps we had both been waiting for the other to make a move, to acknowledge the widening chasm that had grown without us even noticing. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow in our living space, I felt an unexpected sense of clarity. Maybe it was time to confront Veronica, not with accusations or resentment, but with an open heart and the willingness to listen. I picked up my phone and hesitated. Would I be forcing her hand, or could I offer her a chance to explain? The idea of bridging our divide, of turning our fractures into a chance for understanding, lit a flicker of hope in me. Perhaps this experience could be a turning point, if only we dared to face the truth of our situation together. In one particularly heart-wrenching flashback, I remembered how, early in our marriage, Veronica had confided in me about her feelings of isolation and the suffocating routine that had gradually extinguished her spark. Now those very feelings had driven her to seek refuge in a secret ally. Could it be that we were both guilty of allowing the quiet desperation of our souls to dictate our choices? Just when I believed that the labyrinth of deceit had reached its zenith, the final twist unveiled itself in the most unexpected manner. A chance encounter at a friend's gathering led to an accidental meeting with a person who was intimately connected to both Elise and Veronica, a mutual acquaintance, Michael, whose calm demeanor belied the storm of revelations he was about to unleash. Michael's narrative painted a picture far more complex than any of us had anticipated. As he recounted the interwoven strands of our lives, it became shockingly clear that the seeds of betrayal had been sown long before I ever set foot on that fateful path with Elise. Michael revealed that Veronica had known about my affair for years and had quietly orchestrated events that forced me to confront the emptiness of my double life. Simultaneously, Elise's husband, far from being just a negligent partner, had been complicit in a web of deceit that spanned multiple relationships. Our indiscretions, it turned out, were not isolated incidents of passion, but intricate moves in a tragic dance of mutual destruction orchestrated by fate and circumstance. As realization washed over me, I felt the weight of every secret I had kept, the lies I had told myself and others to justify my choices. Michael leaned in, his voice low and steady, as he explained how Veronica had fed me misinformation about Elise, subtly painting her as the ideal escape, carefully masking her flaws to keep me entranced. It was as if she had played the part of a puppeteer, skillfully manipulating the strings of my desire while masking her own motivations. I could barely process the implications of his revelations. Michael paused, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in. "There's more," he said, a shadow crossing his face. "Veronica has her reasons for doing this. And it's not about revenge. She believes that exposing this truth is the only way to save you from yourself. An intervention, if you will." He motioned toward the empty glass on the table, as if to suggest I would need liquid courage to digest the next part. "She's afraid of losing you to a cycle of hurt that never stops spinning." I could hear the tremor in his voice and recognize the deep bond he shared with Veronica, how his loyalty conflicted with the painful truths unfolding. As he continued, my mind raced back to the first moments with Elise, how we had crossed paths at that ill-fated gathering, the sparks igniting something within me that I thought was long extinguished. It was exhilarating at first, that rush of adrenaline masking the reality of our illicit connection. Yet now it felt like chains binding me to a choice I could no longer justify. Michael took a deep breath, drawing my attention back to the present. "You have to confront the reality of your actions. It's the only way forward. If you don't, it'll only lead to further heartbreak." His gaze bore into mine, filled with a mix of concern and understanding, and I knew he was speaking from experience. Michael had walked this dark path before, and his scars were a testament to the pain that unravels when lives become entangled. Suddenly, a loud crash outside snapped us back to the moment. We rushed to the window to see a group of people gathered, the remnants of a broken bicycle scattered across the pavement. I couldn't help but compare that scene to my own life. The wreckage of trust and fidelity, the chaos created by impulsive decisions. Would I be able to pick up the pieces, or would I simply add to the wreckage? As the commotion outside settled, I resolved to face Veronica. It was time to have an honest discussion, a chance to sift through the wreckage, understand the motives behind her actions, and perhaps find a route to redemption. Michael's role in this narrative wouldn't end with just revelations. He would be there, offering support as I untangled the complexities of relationships that had spiraled far beyond control. The stakes were high, the outcomes unpredictable. But I knew one thing for certain. I was ready to confront this darkness. Only then could I hope to rediscover the person I once was, beneath layers of deceit and betrayal, and maybe, just maybe, find a way back to the light. I was left reeling. It seemed that we were all figures in a grand tragic play, each of us struggling against forces beyond our comprehension. In that moment, I felt the full weight of my decisions. Every lie, every stolen moment had led to this moment of reckoning where the universe demanded a heavy toll for our transgressions. In the weeks that followed, the chaos of our intertwined lives manifested in raw, unfiltered agony. I found myself caught between a yearning for freedom and an overwhelming sense of remorse. The conflict within me intensified as I began to question not only the morality of my actions, but their very impact on the people I once loved. Each day, as I navigated the blurred lines between pleasure and penance, I was haunted by the faces of those I had betrayed. Veronica's quiet pain, Elise's desperate vulnerability, and even Michael's resigned acceptance all converged in my mind, creating a cacophony of doubts and fractured self-worth. I often walked for miles under the cold night sky, the rhythmic beating of my heart echoing the internal war between desire and guilt. In those restless hours, I found solace in the hypnotic glow of streetlights, casting long shadows on the pavement, each step echoing my deep-seated regrets. The wind whispered secrets of the past, taunting me with memories I wished to forget but could never escape. I had been a fool, a puppet dancing to the strings of ambition, oblivious to the devastation left in my wake. One evening, as I paused to catch my breath beneath the skeletal branches of an old oak tree, I felt a presence beside me. It was the silhouette of a figure I recognized all too well, Veronica. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and in that moment, the guilt I bore expanded, swallowing me whole. "Why?" Her voice trembled, a whisper tinged with anguish. "I thought I could manage it all," I muttered, shame heating my cheeks. But I lost sight of who I was in the process. I couldn't bear to look into her eyes and see the hurt I had caused. They mirrored the chaos within me, and instead of finding the words to express my remorse, I faltered. "You didn't just lose yourself. You lost us," she replied sharply, and the pain in her voice cut deeper than I anticipated. Her words lingered in the air, sharp and accusatory. I wanted to apologize, to reach out, but guilt held me back, as if I were bound by invisible chains. As I stood there, caught in the electric tension of our shared history, I recalled Elise's laughter that had once filled the same spaces, now laden with silence. Memories of late-night talks and dreams woven under the stars flashed before me. I was the architect of my own despair, and this realization settled heavily on my chest. "I need to make things right," I whispered, half to myself and half to Veronica. "Every day I wake up, I want to believe there's still a chance for redemption." The words tasted bitter, but I had to convey my determination, even if the road felt long and winding. Veronica studied me, her expression softening as if she were weighing my sincerity against the backdrop of all that had happened. "It won't be easy," she warned. "Trust is fragile, and you broke it." Yet amidst the turmoil, a flicker of hope ignited in her gaze. Maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. As we stood together, the wind shifted, carrying away some of my burden. Perhaps this encounter was a sign, a chance to rebuild not just with Veronica, but with everyone I had lost along the way. With every step back into their lives, I would chip away at the walls I had erected around my heart. Each apology would be a brick removed, paving the way toward healing. With renewed purpose, I took a deep breath, inhaling the crispness of the air, allowing it to fill the empty spaces within me. "I'm ready to face the consequences," I declared, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. No more running, no more hiding. It was time to confront the faces of my past, to seek forgiveness, and ultimately to forgive myself. I began keeping a journal, a desperate attempt to reconcile my inner turmoil with the reality I now faced. In those pages, I poured out my confusions, my hopes, and my agonizing regrets. I questioned if redemption was even possible for a man who had strayed so far from the path of integrity. Every entry was a battle cry against the suffocating weight of my past, yet also a lament for the lost opportunities of a once cherished future. There were moments when I would lose myself in the fragmented memories of my life with Veronica, when laughter had filled every corner of our home, when every shared glance promised an eternity of tenderness. I recalled the early mornings filled with hopeful smiles, the whispered vows and dreams that had bound us together. These flashbacks, interspersed with my current agony, reminded me of what we once had and what my actions had irreparably shattered. One particular memory remained etched in my mind: the summer we spent by the lake, where time appeared to stand still amid gentle breezes and radiant sunsets. Veronica and I had talked about our dreams, our plans for the future. I had once believed that love was strong enough to conquer any obstacle. Now, in the bitter aftermath of betrayal, that belief seemed naive and tragically misplaced. Yet as I sat on the worn dock, legs dangling above the water's surface, watching the ripples dance under the glow of the dying sun, I felt a flicker of warmth. It was in these quiet moments that the ghosts of our laughter would echo, reminding me of the innocence we once shared. Each soft splash of fish breaking the surface seemed to whisper tales of that cherished companionship, urging me to remember the essence of who we had been before life wove its tangled web of heartache. We had carved our names into a weathered piece of driftwood, a testament to our promises. But those promises had unraveled, lost in the turbulence of unmet expectations and unspoken words. As I recalled the depth of our conversations, I recognized an unsettling truth. While love may fade, the bond of friendship often lingered long after. Memories can be bittersweet. They tether you to the past even as you yearn to move forward. As the sky deepened into twilight, I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of pine mixed with the coolness of the lake. It was a reminder that the world kept turning, seasons changed, and life continued to unfold in unpredictable ways. I couldn't allow myself to be a prisoner of the past. There was beauty yet to be found, even in a heart fallen into disarray. In that moment of reflection, I decided to reclaim my story. I would carry the spirit of that summer, the dreams, the laughter, the warmth, while forging a new path infused with resilience. I pictured myself returning to the lake in years to come, not for the ghosts of love lost, but for the promise of new beginnings. Even the horizon, with its darkening hues, held the potential for dawn, a reminder that light always follows darkness. With a gentle sigh, I stood up, the weight of my past still heavy but no longer unbearable. I looked out one last time at the shimmering lake, a canvas of shifting colors, and made a silent promise to nurture the hope buried deep within me. Perhaps, just perhaps, this summer would mark not the end of an era, but the beginning of a journey towards self-discovery, healing, and ultimately a new kind of love, one rooted in the understanding of my own worth. The flashbacks often came unexpectedly. A familiar melody on the radio, a scent of jasmine reminiscent of her perfume, even the way the morning light filtered in through our bedroom window. All these fragments carried the ghosts of our past. In those moments, the full scale of my transgressions would crash over me, and I was left alone with the piercing silence of regret. It was inevitable that the tension, long simmering beneath the surface, would reach a boiling point. One fateful evening, as the chill of winter merged with the warmth of a dying fire, Veronica and I confronted one another in a desolate living room that once radiated comfort and safety. "I know about you and Elise," Veronica said, her voice steady yet laden with sorrow. Her words echoed in the silent space between us, each syllable a dagger piercing the remnants of our shared past. My heart pounded like a drum of impending doom as I realized that the carefully constructed facade of normalcy had crumbled entirely. In that moment, the air grew thick with unspoken memories. Laughter we once shared in sunlit rooms, tender glances exchanged over candlelit dinners, and the soft whispers in the dark that promised forever. But forever felt like a distant dream now, shattered by Veronica's revelation. "I thought I could keep it hidden," I whispered, almost to myself, feeling the walls of my carefully curated life begin to close in around me. She took a step closer, her eyes dark pools of hurt and betrayal. "You had a choice, and you chose her," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I could see the tremor that betrayed her tough exterior, and each word felt like a fresh blow to my chest. "Did you even love me, or was it all just a lie?" The question hung in the air, a specter of our past, and for the first time I felt the weight of my decisions. "It wasn't a lie," I protested, desperate to reach her. "How could you think that?" But even as I spoke, I knew the truth was more complicated than I could bear to admit. Veronica crossed her arms, her body language turning defensive. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? Or that I wouldn't care?" Her voice trembled slightly but then hardened, as if she were trying to shield herself from the truth. "We shared dreams, plans. I thought we were building a life together. With every breath, the gulf between us widened. I could feel my past choices clawing at my thoughts like a haunting melody, each note reminding me of my cowardice, of my failure to face reality. "You didn't deserve this, Veronica. You deserved honesty," I spoke, my voice cracking under the weight of regret. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning, but I was scared of losing you." Her eyes glistened, and for a fleeting second, I saw the glimmer of the love we once nurtured. "And now what?" she asked, her tone sharp with resolve. "What do we do with this shattered illusion?" In that instant, I realized the gravity of my choices. I had not only jeopardized my relationship with her, I had also ensnared Elise in a web of deceit that now threatened to unravel and expose us both. "We need to confront this," I admitted, the resolve forming in my chest, daring to provoke a flicker of hope. "I owe you that, and I owe it to her as well." Veronica's expression shifted, a mix of confusion and contemplation washing over her features. "Confront it together?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost pleading. "After everything?" As silence enveloped us again, the echoes of promises past lingered, reminding me of the challenge that lay ahead. But underneath the pain, beneath the sorrow, a flicker of determination sparked in me. It was time to dismantle the walls and begin anew. If only we could navigate the mess I had created. The confrontation was not a scene of explosive anger, but of sorrowful resignation. Veronica admitted that she had been aware of my wandering heart for a long time and had been silently planning her own escape from a loveless marriage. At that moment, I felt as though I was witnessing the slow death of everything I had once cherished. In a turn of bitter irony, as we exchanged raw confessions, I could see that Veronica's own betrayal was not meant to wound me, but to free her from the chains of our mutual despair. Both of us were culpable, trapped in a spiral of self-deception and unfulfilled desires. Even as I pleaded for forgiveness, I knew that some debts could never be repaid. The universe, as if in response to our disintegrated vows, began its relentless course of retribution. What followed was a series of events that left little room for redemption. Elise, crushed under the weight of her own secret struggles, made the drastic choice to vanish from our lives without a hint of goodbye. Her departure was both a relief and an agony, a final severance from the chaotic entanglements that had threatened to consume us all. Veronica, meanwhile, found solace in the arms of a kindred spirit, someone whose presence promised a chance at rebuilding what had been so irreparably lost. I, on the other hand, watched in agonizing silence as everything I had once held dear crumbled before my eyes. The moment of reckoning had arrived, and there was no escape from the price I was destined to pay. As I stood there, an observer to my own dismantled life, I felt an overwhelming sense of betrayal mixed with a pang of desperation. The echoes of laughter we once shared haunted me, too vivid to ignore. I had long been aware that fragile relationships could shatter with the slightest provocation, but to witness the very end of ours felt like a brutal awakening. Veronica's laughter, once a sweet music in my heart, now held a hollow resonance. It carried with it the weight of memories, of dreams unfulfilled, promises broken, and a love that had once flourished against all odds. I had hoped for reconciliation, but was painfully aware that she was moving forward without me, leaving me to grapple with the remnant pieces of our shared history. The nights grew longer, filled with an emptiness that settled in my bones, and daylight offered little respite. Friends, unable to understand the depth of my sorrow, tried to comfort me with platitudes. Time heals all wounds, they said, but what they didn't grasp was that time felt more like an enemy in that moment, a relentless tide washing away the last few remnants of what had been. It was during one of those endless nights that I made a decision. Instead of wallowing in despair, I chose to turn my pain into purpose. I enrolled in a local art class, hoping to channel my feelings into something constructive. As I picked up a brush for the first time, the canvas became a refuge, each stroke a release of the pent-up emotions I had carried for far too long. In the first few weeks, the images I created were raw and fragmented, mirroring my tumultuous state of mind, revealing the chaos within. But gradually, as I poured my heart onto the canvas, they began to evolve. I discovered beauty in depicting sorrow, and in the chaotic interplay of colors, I found an unexpected sense of clarity blooming amidst the rubble of my heartache. Each brushstroke represented not just my pain, but also my journey of healing. Slowly but surely, I began to understand the depth of resilience that lay within me. I could coexist with the memories, acknowledge the pain, yet also strive for something greater. And as my art flourished, so did my spirit. I recognized that rebuilding didn't mean returning to what was lost. It meant embracing a journey towards something entirely new. As I painted, I often thought of Veronica, her laughter, her warmth, and the dreams we once whispered under the stars. Though we were now on different paths, I hoped that one day she might see the transformations we sparked in each other. Perhaps we could find a way to coexist amicably in this new landscape where love and loss intertwined. For now, it was enough to exist, to express, and to allow myself to heal. In the swirling chaos of pain and emotion, I began to glimpse the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. And in that flicker of hope, there lay the promise of redemption. I began to lose pieces of myself in the aftermath of my betrayals. The man who once carried the hope of renewal was now embittered by the haunting echoes of his choices. My days blurred into a monotonous haze of regret and introspection, every tick of the clock a reminder of the life I had obliterated through my own hand. In the final months of what remained of my shattered existence, I struggled with one burning question. Could I ever reclaim the fragments of my soul that I had sacrificed for fleeting passions? The answer, it seemed, was nothing short of a cruel joke fate played on me. Every attempt at redemption was undermined by the weeds of regret that had taken root deep within. I sought solace in long walks along rain-drenched streets and the solitude of midnight reflections. I started therapy, desperate to reconcile the discordant notes of my inner symphony, hoping that some measure of forgiveness might be extended, even if only by myself. Yet the more I sought redemption, the more I was forced to confront the undeniable truth that some sins, though forgiven on paper, leave scars that time cannot heal. In my quest for understanding, I began to explore the depths of my past, retracing steps that had long been buried beneath layers of guilt and regret. Each memory was like a ghost, haunting me with echoes of who I once was and who I could have become. I found myself drawn to old photographs, each snapshot a frozen moment that whispered stories of hope and despair. It was as if the faces in those frames bore witness to my struggles. Friends who had shared laughter and tears and moments of connection that had lit up the darkest days. As the nights grew longer and my sessions with the therapist transformed into an uninhibited exchange of fears and aspirations, I slowly began to dismantle the walls I had built around my heart. We delved into the tangled web of my emotions, examining the roots of my vulnerabilities and the myriad ways they had shaped my choices. With every revelation, I felt a thread of resilience emerging within me, a spark igniting in the stillness of the storm. And yet each step towards healing was met with resistance, the familiar tug of self-doubt. I wrestled with the haunting refrain of inadequacy, the insidious voice that would not relent. But in those moments of vulnerability, I clung to the notion that healing is not linear. It is as chaotic and unpredictable as life itself. I began to journal my journey, pouring words onto pages like a river overflowing its banks. Each sentence a release, each paragraph a step toward liberation. Eventually, I learned to find beauty in the cracks, illuminating my imperfections with the light of acceptance. I started to connect with others who had navigated their own storms, sharing stories that resonated with my experiences. In those exchanges, I discovered a profound sense of community, a reminder that none of us truly walk alone, even in our darkest hours. As spring approached, I felt a gentle thawing within me, a slow blooming of hope against the backdrop of my struggles. The rain-drenched streets that had once mirrored my despair now welcomed the colors of new beginnings, the buds on trees, the vibrant blooms that fought through the remnants of winter. These were the moments I began to cherish, the whispers of possibility amidst the chaos. With each passing day, I learned to forgive not just my past mistakes, but also the person I had been. I realized that growth lies not in perfection, but in the courage to embrace each chapter of our lives, flawed, beautiful, and undeniably real. And perhaps in this tapestry of experiences woven together with threads of resilience, lay the true essence of my symphony, still playing, still searching for harmony. In one particularly poignant flashback, I recalled a conversation with a wise friend who once told me, "Forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It's about accepting the unbearable weight of our errors and learning to live with them." I clung to those words as a lifeline, attempting to rebuild the core of a man who had lost himself in the labyrinth of modern relationships. And then, as if the universe had stored all its retributive energy for this final moment, the inevitable reckoning came. One fateful afternoon, in an atmosphere thick with tension and finality, all secrets that I had tried so desperately to bury were brought to light. Veronica, Elise's estranged husband, Michael, and a handful of unsuspecting acquaintances converged in one dramatic confrontation that left no soul unscathed. Standing in the center of a gathering that felt more like a tribunal than a reunion, I was forced to listen as every hidden truth was mercilessly unveiled. Veronica's silent suffering, Elise's desperate rebellion, and even my own faltering justifications were stripped bare for all to see. The courtroom of life had arrived, and I had no defense left. As the accusations flew through the air, each one a dagger aimed at my heart, I felt the walls of my past closing in around me. I could see the faces of my friends, no, my judges, twisted in a mix of anger and sorrow, their expressions a reminder of all the times I had turned away from honesty in favor of convenience. The accusations had a rhythm, a cruel song replaying the moments where I had betrayed their trust, the alliances I had forged in shadows that, until now, had remained untouched by the light of day. Veronica stepped forward, her voice quivering yet resolute, like a beacon guiding us through the tempest. "You don't understand," she began, her eyes meeting mine with a fierceness I hadn't expected. "You thought your secrets protected us, but they only isolated you. I felt your silence like a weight on my chest, suffocating the connection we once had. I needed you to be my ally, but instead, you became a ghost in my life." Her words echoed in the room, resonating with unspoken fears and shared regrets. Elise, always the fiery spirit, was next to unleash her ire. "And what about you?" she demanded, turning her gaze from Veronica to me. "You played the part of the peacekeeper while stirring turbulence beneath the surface. Your attempts to mediate only added fuel to the fire of our discontent. We could have faced our truce together, but instead you chose to stand aside, leaving us both to confront the consequences alone." Rage tinged her words, an electric current that seemed to zap through the gathering. I could see the flicker of my past mistakes reflected in her eyes, a painful reminder of how much I had let her down. The weight of these revelations bore down on me. Regret mingled with fear, creating a storm within. I tried to piece together a response, but the thoughts tangled in my mind like vines, choking the words before they could escape. What could I say that might salvage even a fraction of the respect I had squandered? My voice, when it finally surfaced, was a mere whisper, cracking under the pressure of my emotions. I was scared of losing you both in my chaos. The room fell silent, an eerie pause hanging in the air as my admission settled among us. It wasn't a confession, it was a plea for understanding. The truth is often a double-edged sword, and I had wielded it recklessly. Perhaps this moment could serve as an awakening instead of a funeral for our friendships. I ventured further. What if we work to navigate this together, starting now? Hope, fragile and tentative, slipped into the conversation like a whisper of wind through autumn leaves. I noticed Veronica's shoulders soften slightly, and Elise's fiery gaze shifted, as if reconsidering the boundaries of our hurt. Maybe, I mused, this tribunal could become a renaissance, a rebirth of the connections we had almost lost forever to the shadows of unspoken truths. "I'm willing to be better," I continued, my heart racing with each word. "Not just for you, but for myself. What can I do to help us heal?" The vulnerability I displayed felt foreign yet liberating, a transformative moment of stepping into the light after a long winter. Here, amidst uncertainty, I took a deep breath, ready for whatever lay ahead. Perhaps this was the beginning of understanding, a chance to rebuild from the ashes of our conflicts. In that harrowing moment, as I faced the consequences of actions born out of weakness and yearning, I realized that the scales of retribution were indeed balanced. Justice was not delivered by vindictive retribution, but by the inexorable, often painful process of living with one's choices. Every betrayal, every whispered lie had led to this singular point of destiny, and the price I paid was not measured by the loss of love or trust, but by the irreversible shattering of my own self-worth. In the quiet aftermath of the final reckoning, I found myself alone with the remnants of a life that once promised fulfillment. Veronica had walked away to forge a new beginning with her newfound strength, and the man who offered her a path away from the bitterness of our past. Elise's disappearance left behind a void that was both relieving and devastating. A reminder of the price of secrets that no longer had meaning without the context of shared regret. I returned to the solitude of my empty apartment, the echoes of lost laughter and broken promises resonating in every silent corner. Every day was a battle, a fight against the haunting memories and the internal demon that taunted me with what could have been. I attempted to piece together a semblance of a future, but each attempt was marred by an enduring guilt that transformed even the simplest act of living into an ordeal of penance. As I sat on the edge of my unmade bed, the weight of my thoughts felt like a suffocating blanket. Outside, the world continued to move, blissfully unaware of my turmoil. I watched the leaves dance in the wind through my dusty window, their carefree sway contrasting sharply with the rigidity of my shackled emotions. The ticking of the clock filled the silence, each second a reminder that time was relentless. And yet, I felt stuck in a limbo of my own making. I glanced at the faded photographs haphazardly strewn across my walls, reminders of a life once vibrant. Friends with bright smiles, Moments filled with joy that seemed like they belonged to someone else now. I wondered if they too harbored secrets and regrets. Did they know the cost of moving on? Or were they simply better equipped to bury their pain beneath layers of laughter and small talk? That evening, I felt a strange compulsion to reach out to them, to connect with the very souls I had distanced myself from in my time of sorrow. My fingers hesitated over my phone screen, battling the urge to type a simple hello. Would they welcome me back, or would my absence render me a ghost, hovering aimlessly in their memories? Just as I was about to put the phone down, a message popped up from Sarah, a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. "I miss you," it read, simple yet potent, like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. My heart raced as I realized this could be a chance, the chance to step out of my shadows. With trembling hands, I replied, a slowly dawning hope rising like the sun breaking through heavy clouds. Over the next few weeks, I slowly reintroduced myself to the world. A coffee here, a dinner there. Each encounter was awkward at first, the unspoken words about my absence lingering in the air, a dense fog. Yet with each shared laugh and exchanged memory, I began to feel a flicker of light igniting within me, a tiny flame that had been extinguished, now rekindling with the warmth of genuine companionship. Still, the shadows loomed, reminding me of paths not taken. I often found myself drifting into melancholy during quiet moments. Yet I clung to those analogies of hope I discovered in the laughter of my friends. It was not easy, but I learned that scars could tell stories of resilience rather than defeat. Each gathering with friends became a ritual of healing, a collective remembrance of the strength found in vulnerability. As spring approached and nature clawed its way back from the grips of winter, I realized that moving forward was not about erasing the past, but learning to carry it with grace. Perhaps solitude had served its purpose by forcing me to reconcile my demons. Perhaps laughter and connection would be the antidote that led me toward joy once more. So I transformed my apartment, my sanctuary, from a tomb of memories into a canvas of hope. I painted the walls bright colors, hung up new pictures, and filled the space with plants that breathed life into every corner. I wanted my home to reflect not the ghosts of my sorrow, but the vibrancy of new beginnings. In those small acts, I found the courage to forgive myself and began to envision a future crafted not merely from survival, but from a deep-seated desire to embrace life again, fully and without reservation. The echoes of lost laughter may always linger, but they no longer dictated my every thought. I began writing down my story, not as an act of self-indulgence, but as a desperate effort to grapple with the complexity of human relationships, the simultaneous blending of love, betrayal, and forgiveness. I wished for my tale to serve as a cautionary note to others, a crucial reminder that even the smallest departures from honesty can spiral into a labyrinth of irrevocable consequences, shaping lives in unanticipated ways. I wanted to offer a narrative that not only reflects the heart's desires, but also the heart's mistakes. Now, as I sit and reflect on the wreckage of my former self, I am forced to confront the truth. There are no simple answers, no one-dimensional judgments in a world as complex as the human heart. I pay the price each day, a price that is etched into every scar on my soul. In the end, the drama of my infidelity, the betrayal of love, and the inevitable retribution were not punishments designed by fate, but lessons that I was destined to learn. I share my story not with pride, but with quiet resignation, a final testimony to the fragile nature of modern love. Though my actions have irreversibly altered the course of several lives, I hope that in bearing witness to my own downfall, others may glimpse the importance of integrity and the price of deception. In the fullness of time, perhaps even the sharpest wounds will give way to understanding, and from the ashes of our indiscretions, a more honest self may eventually emerge.